The benefits of the travels of Gullus, given Tavshim Memches, press 1. For Hashem Tapagav, Vahi Ben Sayar Aaron, each true mission in a summer travel, given Tavshim Zion, press 2. For Hashem Tapagav, the scattering of the Eden and Gullus to gather the sparks of Kedusha, given Tavshim Samach Beis, press 3. For Hashem Tapagav, waiting for Miriam in the desert, and the hidden treasures of Tisha B'Av, given Tavshim Samach Dalet, press 4.
And the Amlay Nasta at the Yosef Miriam. Miriam became a Messiah because, according to what expected of her, according to her standards in Yerushalayim, it was considered that she talked Lashon Hara and Moshe Rabbeinu, and she was Tamei and for 7 days. So they waited 7 days. So the Gemara says, Rashi brings it, that because Miriam waited for Moshe Rabbeinu with the Santa V'Chayfa Nerachek, she stood from a distance with Deya Mayayasalai, and she waited to see what can happen with Moshe. She wouldn't let him without the necessary surveillance. So because of that, because Miriam waited for Moshe, so Yidden waited for Miriam. I saw in the exile of the satmar that when it says Miriam, it also includes this. We learn Pesach Pshat, that's how they're trying to do it. Remember what happened to Miriam when she spoke to Lashon Hara. He would say that it also includes, remember the child that Miriam got because she waited for Moshe. Remember what it means to do a chesed. The child which is something to the tzaddik. Then the satmar Rav continues, and he says that there were ramifications from her waiting for Moshe. If they wouldn't have waited for her, they were in Midbar Paran. They were in the Refidim. Where was it? Where did Miriam's people? Chatzayrais. And then they used to run the Chatzayrais, and then they came to Midbar Paran, and from Midbar Paran they sent the Miriam. If they would not have waited for Miriam, they would have departed from Chatzayrais 7 days earlier, and they would have sent the Miriam 7 days earlier. Every makim in the Midbar has a specific Indian. What happens in that, that's why the Torah repeats Eila Matzah B'nai Yisrael and goes to the water Matzah. Every matzah has its specific function. So from Midbar Paran, the Meragelim were sent. If they would have arrived 7 days earlier, so the 40 days would have ended 7 days earlier. And the Meragelim would have come back not on Tisha B'Av, but 7 days earlier. Tisha B'Av is an ill-fated day. The mazel of Tisha B'Av is bad. If they wouldn't have come back on Tisha B'Av, maybe the whole Indian of the Meragelim wouldn't have passed. Because the Yom is Gaira. The Yicha Ach Hashem B'Yom Haru. The Gemara talking about Tisha B'Av says, Megalgalim Neshama can do it. That's what I should have in the dark with Neshama. Megalgal and Chayiv, the Yom Chayiv, the Gemara says. Tisha B'Av is a Yom Chayiv. It's a bad day. And the day was Goyim, the satmar says. So therefore, if not for Miriam, waiting for Miriam, maybe it wouldn't even have had Tisha B'Av. So why did this happen? So he says, that's how the Rebbe Yisrael wanted. The Rebbe Yisrael wanted there should be Meraglim. Then it's a medrash, and Chuma. We already spoke about this medrash. The medrash says, Noira Alila al B'nai Adam. The Rebbe Yisrael makes Alila on B'nai Adam. It's things that are Bilgulim, there are Levites. It's Adamation had to be from the Yetzirah. It wasn't that because he had from the Yetzirah that's what happened. It wasn't a plan of the Rebbe Yisrael, he had to be from the Yetzirah. Yosef was supposed to be sold. It wasn't a plan of the Rebbe Yisrael. Moshe was supposed to be Nanash by the Meimer. It was on, and that Yidden should not go into Eretz Yisrael. The Yosef Mitzrayim. What? You're asking a very good question. In fact, you already have been preceded by the Rambam. He asked this question. He asked, how can it clear the Yidden? So the Rambam says we can't understand these things. So very much later, much will say. So anyway, there was a reason. There had to be a Tisha B'Av. There had to be a Chorban based on English. It was on the Rebbe Yisrael's plan. How we could be Masada of that and with Priva, all right, we don't understand these things. Everything has reasons from the Rebbe Yisrael. It had to be that way. That on Tisha B'Av there should be the Meraglim coming back and the Yecha'at Hashem B'Yayim Haru, that the Rebbe Yisrael should scorn on that day. On the day was the Charaymah. I would want to add something to that. We see that the whole Chorban was because of Lashon Hara. In other words, because Miriam taught Lashon Hara, according to her standards, it was Lashon Hara. So therefore, she was detained 7 days, and because of these 7 days, the Meraglim came back on Tisha B'Av, and that was guiding the Chorban, the first Chorban, the second Chorban, Lashon Hara. The second Chorban, the Gemara says the fellowship because of Lashon Hara was Kamsa Bar Kamsa. Or as the Gemara explains, that there was a Lashon Hara by Klal Yisrael. So the Kamsa Bar Kamsa is only a symbol. Because the Aveda was Lashon Hara, so the direct Sibba for the Chorban was Kamsa Bar Kamsa, Lashon Hara. But it was because the Olam wasn't near the Lashon Hara. It's only a Nida Kneged Nida that the events which caused the Chorban was Lashon Hara. So in other words, starting with Miriam, who talked Lashon Hara, and the image will be at a Chenda, because the Yidden accepted the Lashon Hara from the Meraglim. Therefore, the Gemara says, maybe it's also, Yidden are in Gomet. It all started with Lashon Hara, Miriam Lashon Hara, the Lashon Hara, the second base on Megiddo. I do think that in the last several decades, there was the biggest fire for Israel about the Russian heaven. It started with the Chaim writing his monumental sefer on Russian heaven, and after the war, there was a big movement among Jews, and people get up in the forefront, Gedali Israel, and they advocate for learning of Hilchos Russian heaven, like the brother Manchester, Aspergal, others. Wherever you go, there's a group of women learning the Dinah of Lashon Hara. It's printed in English, based on the Sefer Chafetz Chaim. They're the biggest errors about Lashon Hara. But the time came for the Geula. And the Ikar Chorban came because of Lashon Hara. So the Rebbe Shlomo sent his agents to correct this program, and that we should be more nizar for Lashon Hara. Because Ayaras Menashemayim. But there's still a very big question mark, perhaps several question marks with an exclamation mark, that Miriam was a tzaddik. Miriam was an Aziyah. Miriam was zeicher that her pasuk was added to the Shira Tayyam. She sang Shira to the Rabbeinu Shalom. A mouth that says Lashon Hara isn't zeicher to Shira. Her Shira is mitzvah, it's eternal. Because of Miriam, the Chorban came, because of her Lashon Hara. And it saw nobody but Miriam of all people. And what happened? Miriam was she was quarantined because she spoke Lashon Hara, so she had to be disbanded. Brother Yeshe, and even later, they did her a favor. And Miriam accepted the favor. Wouldn't Miriam rather stay in the mitzvah? Wouldn't she rather perish in the mitzvah? That not because of her, Yidden should come. The Miriam should come 7 days later and land on Tisha B'Av, and because of that, the Chorban should come out. What? Poor Miriam. Why did rebbe do this to Miriam? And you call that schar? But because she waited for Moshe, how schar is that they waited for her? What does she need that schar for? and the klal is Megalgul and Shvasayidei Zakai. And in her case, it was Megalgul that the return of the Meraglim was Nayim Chayim. Something similar to this Hanacha from the Chassam Sofer, that because of waiting 7 days, the Chorban came out, and the Chassam Sofer says we can't understand these things. I mean, the satmar says we can't understand these things. Something similar to that, the Chassam Sofer says. Probably from that, the satmar got it confused. What happened? Because of Miriam, the Chorban came out on Tisha B'Av. The ill-fated day, which is Gayim Arat, the Galvan and Chayiv, the Yain Chayiv. The Chassam Sofer says the Chayiv like this. You know that by Matan Torah, Pesach Moshe Yom Echad Midayim. Moshe Rabbeinu added another day. The Torah was supposed to be given on the 50th day. He added another day. And the Torah was supposed to be given. Moshe Rabbeinu was supposed to go up and spend 40 days by Shemayim to be mekabel the Torah, so it should be okay, and come down at the end of 40 days. If Moshe would not have been Moses, Yom Echad Midaitai, those 40 days would have ended Yudvos Tammuz. Because Moshe Rabbeinu was Moses, Yom Echad Midaitai, they ended Shiva Asar Tammuz. Shiva Asar Tammuz is an ill-fated day. A day that a Yom Chayim, so, because Moshe was Moshe, Yom Echad Midaitai, so it came out that the luchos were broken. If not for that, the luchos wouldn't have been broken. Because it was the Yom Chayim of Shiva Asar Tammuz that was guiding to them. And that we didn't worship the Yahweh then. So therefore, that's how the Chasam Sofer says Pshat in the Magen Avraham. The Magen Avraham asks this very famous kasha: how can we say Yom Matan Torah on Shisha B'Sivim when actually the Torah was given Shriya B'Sivim, because I said Moshe Yom Echad Midaitai. The Torah was given on the 51st day of Shriya. So the Magen Avraham answers the Torah which needs to be. He says that's Maram is and Yom Tov Sheni Shadoriya. So the Tzaitel says that's Yom Tov Sheni Shadoriya. Because if Moshe Rabbeinu wouldn't have been made if Yom Echad Midaitai, the luchos wouldn't have been broken on Shiva Asar Tammuz, and Yidden wouldn't go to God. So that's Yom Tov Sheni Shadoriya. That's what Chasam Sofer says. So on this Chasam Sofer we have the same concept. Moshe Rabbeinu, who wanted to ask Tahara B'Yisrael, who wanted that the Torah should be given with more Hachana, with more Tahara, he was guiding the Chorban, that the luchos were broken and Shiva Asar Tammuz because he was Moshe Yom Echad Midaitai. Well, it's good, it's yummy, it's good to have 2 days Yom Tov. It's nice. The Chorban was a grand because of that. And the Shira Saluchais was a grand because of that. Well, we'll make a Haggadah that the Moshe and his Talmidim on the Baha'u'llah and Yom Tisha B'Av is the emes has a pneumius in it. Tisha B'Av has a ties in it. The Gemara tells us that in the times of the Beit HaMikdash, Tisha B'Av was a Yom Tov. And Tisha B'Av will be a Yom Tov. In fact, the Pasuk says, Torah Olay Mayeh Lish B'Yabachuva. Tisha B'Av is a Mayeh. Of all things, Erev Tisha B'Av and on Tisha B'Av, we don't take Tachna, because Tisha B'Av is a Mayeh. What kind of a Yom Tov is that? What shit is a Mayeh? No, there is a pneumius in Tisha B'Av. Tisha B'Av has a good pneumius in itself. When Mashiach will come, it'll be the biggest Yom Tov. I would, at this point, want to bring out a certain Indian, which is Miriam in Isaiah. Eile Mayadei Hashem. The Isaiah says that a Talmud Chacham is the Pchinat Shabbos. And just like for Shabbos, you have to prepare Chayil Meichel Shabbos and Shabbos Meichel Yatzmai. So for a Talmud Chacham, you have to prepare. The Yemei HaChayil, these are the Pashat Yidin, they have to support the Talmud Chacham. They're Meichel Shabbos. The Shabbos, the Talmud Chacham is not supposed to do any malach. Like the Gemara says, the Talmud Chacham is not allowed to do malach with Meshreisha. That's what the Zayah says. I would elaborate on that. Eile Mayadei Hashem. There are many madreigas in Mayadim. There is the Shabbos. So there's a Talmud Chacham that his neshama is Shabbos. Just like there's a calendar Shabbos in Zman, There is a Nefesh Shabbos, a Nefesh. There is a Talmud Chacham who's Shabbos. That means the real big Talmud Chacham who's the Meira Ha'irah for Klal Yisrael, and he's supposed to sit and learn, and everybody's supposed to support him. Chayil Meifel Shabbos. Then there's a lesser Madrega of Talmud Chacham. A lesser Madrega of a Mayet. A Talmud Chacham that's Pchinas Yamtiv. A Talmud Chacham who's Pchinas Yamtiv is a Baha'ultach. He's not out to make a lot of money. He'll make a livelihood and only make enough for what he needs. In other words, there's a Talmud Chacham who's Pchinas Yamtiv. That does the malacha for Eichel Nefesh. What he needs, he works for. He doesn't need any account in the bank, he doesn't need any luxury, he doesn't need any excesses. He's the Talmud Chacham of Pchinas Yamtiv. He works for Eichel Nefesh, and that's all. Then there's a lesser Talmud Chacham. We would call him Chalamayit. Chalamayit works even for more than Eichel Nefesh. For Dabar Avi. But stand to make money, not. For Shivna Madregas and Talmud Chacham. And then a land. There's another kind of a Mayit. And I really hope that there's no such Mayit in this room. I don't think so. I'm sure that there is. The Pasuk, when he speaks that Tisha B'Av is a Mayit, speaks about the Bacha. There's a certain bracha. It is across the street. Across the street from me, across the street from you. It is across the street. That bracha is a big Krishna. He's gifted. He can grow up to be he can develop to be a big Talmud Chacham and another Chayid. But he turns sour. He turned sour. For a more vivid description of this kind of a bracha, the J.O. had some articles about it in the last year. The bracha turned sour. He went off. He's the bracha that could have been a Mayit. He could have been a Talmud Chacham. But because of this guy's fault, because of his parents' fault, or the Rebbe's fault, or the Yeshiva's fault, according to all the theories that the Mechanchim give. And I would say, in the vein of what he said before, because I wish I don't want it at this point, because he went sour, he's on the fringe. He could have been a Mayit. He's a potential Mayit. This is Tisha B'Av. A Mayit that went sour. A Bacha that went sour. Ka'alei Mayit Lishba Bachir. He's also a Mayit. That Mayit doesn't have to stay that way. He could be salvaged. We can save him. He can do tshuva. We can be mekad of him. Let him be, and then he'll develop to be the real Mayit that he has the potential to be. This is what Tisha B'Av represents. The Mayit that got turned off and went sour. The Bacha. Usually it happens with the Bacha. The Yirmiyahu speaks about the Bacha. Now, this boy, he can become good. He'll turn back. He'll get an outreach program. We'll get to him, and he'll become a big Batshuva, and he's going to go around, and he in turn will be miles of Batshuva, thousands of years. He'll become one of the biggest Mayadim. That's what happens to Tisha B'Av. Tisha B'Av will be the biggest Mayit. The moshe in the Chayres, that tells you that there are 22 days from Rosh Hashanah until Simchas Torah. And according to the 22 days of the Yemei Mitzrayim, from Shiva to the time of Tisha B'Av, they correspond with each other. In other words, these are the greatest days in the Jewish calendar, and the Yemei Mitzrayim are the lowest days in the Jewish calendar. They're going to go through a metamorphosis. They're going to change. When Mashiach will come, these are going to be the biggest ma'adim in the entire year. The moshe and the exile. There is a place of Tefillah Tzaddik from the Beluga Rebbe. There was a Beluga Rebbe here in Baruch, not the stepson of the Rebbe. This Beluga Rebbe's grandfather was a tzaddik nifla, a lunatic tzaddik, ish pebble. He wrote a sefer Tefillah Tzaddik. In that sefer, there are three of Torah, which is the matriyos and the cheshbonos. A human mind is not capable of saying it. So it happened that a bacher was complaining to me about the aspects in the moon. I told him to learn that sefer, and he's going to see Torah on Hashanah. So the biggest chiddushim that he wrote were on Sukkot. When did he write these? When did he prepare these chiddushei Torah, which he said on Sukkot? The first day of the 9 days in Rosh Chodesh, he was mechadish a piece of Torah which he put aside. He's going to say that on the first day of Sukkot. The second day, he was mechadish a piece of Torah, a mechadish piece of Torah, which he's going to say on the second day of Sukkot. The 9th day, Tisha B'Av, perhaps Erev Tisha B'Av, or maybe even on Tisha B'Av, the big tzaddik Be'er and Torah even on Tisha B'Av. The Yerushalmi, which gives a heads up for that, because they can't keep away from Torah. The Rocket Shabbat used to learn the publicly Torah on Tisha B'Av. So he asked me, he was amazed. So he said, I want to be Torah in the time of Gehenna that you get to learn in Torah. So that was a against some of the Zotah. But it's really a Yerushalmi that it says over there that some chacham that can't free his mind from learning Torah, he just can't. He's allowed to learn on Tisha B'Av. So he prepared for Tisha B'Av the Torah that he's going to say on Simchas Torah. And these were the biggest chiddush. Because the 9 days, the 3 weeks, the lowest days in the year, the curse of the days in the year, they correspond with the most blessed of the days in the year. So Rosh Hashanah until Simchas Torah. There is a big future waiting for Tisha B'Av. It's going to be a Ma'adik Yom. It's going to be a real Ma'adik. Like the Navi says, Tzayma Ravi, Tzayma Chamishi, Beis Yehuda, L'Sasan, or L'Simcha, or L'Mayadim Tzayim. It's going to be a big Mayim. Shabbat Kazachar. These Tzaymas, Tzayma Ravi, Tzayma Chamishi, Shabbat Kazachar, and Tisha B'Av will be the biggest. So really, Tisha B'Av is a Mayim in disguise. Deep in his pneumius, Tisha B'Av is very good. But on the surface, it's soiled now. So they'll take off its soiled clothing and put on big safate. And then it becomes Tisha B'Av, the day of the biggest service. It was a plancha there, very, very big guy, and a tzaddik, and then the Yechid, Rav Shitarein. He was the father-in-law of the Frierdiker satmar. So on Shabbos Chazayin, he used to give a little presentation of what's going to happen when Mashiach will come. He took a cup of wine, held it in his hand, and he made kiddush for Tisha B'Av. And he said like this, and he said it to the Nusach, and 2 streams of tears came down from his eye. We're going to make a kiddush on Tisha B'Av, the plancha. It'll be a Ma'adik big Yom. The It'll be my Adam L'Simcha, Hashem Chag Tisha B'Av, my Adam L'Simcha, like a Navi said. The person of L'Simcha, the my Adam Chag. On Shabbos Baha'oltcha, it's not such a happy Saturday. It's the sign in there, another such thing. Already Shabbos Baha'oltcha is a big turn away from the Simcha of Shavuos. We went up on the mountain, starting from Mishasa B'Shvat, like your Zayda, the satmar, the Tanzarav said. That starting from Mishasa B'Shvat, there isn't 2 weeks for Adiyam. Mishasa B'Shvat, Chaydish Adon, Mabon B'Simcha, Purim, Chaydish Nis, Pesach, Chaydish Shiyah, Pesach Sheni, Chaydish Sim, Shavuos. So for Chamisha Tzavav, we start ascending behind, all the way up to Tisha B'Av. Shavuos. Shavuos, we reach the peak. From Shavuos, we start going down. The Shabbos after Shavuos is still Shavuos. Shabbos nach Shavuos is nach Shavuos. It's still in the Yemei Tashlum. Shabbos after the first Shabbos after Shavuos is Vayiyam Kimasainen, and we need the Pasha Vayiben Tzayah to be mastering Ben Paranis Lekaranis. And then we have Miriam with Lashon Vada. Well, and the Shabbos of Parshas Baha'oltcha was always the Shabbos preceding Chav Sivan. Chav Sivan was always a kindness by me because of the big exile that Eden had in the days of the Crusades. Why did the exile? Hundreds of thousands of Eden were made to Nefesh. They were told either Shema, or we're going to throw you into the Rhine, or we're going to burn you all up. And the same thing repeated several hundred years later in the exile started back. It was all uncertain. And again, in the Holocaust, if you're going to notice, the older Eden, the survivors of the Holocaust, are all fighting for the end in this season. Because that's when the Israelis, at least in Hungary, were. It was not can be 7 days. Chav Sivan is a big time. Nevertheless, Erev Shabbos, Baha'oltcha, the Mark Lechevich, one of the Mikvah Media Bashantik, used to go to the mikveh accompanied with music. He went to the mikveh with a band. Why? Because in this Sadra it says, Ki Hashem debatay v'anitzah. Moshe said to Yitzchak, L'cha Yimanu, Ki Hashem debatay v'anitzah. In other words, you see that we're flowing now. We're flowing down to Tisha B'Av. From starting from Chav Kislev. That's from Chav Sivan. Hashem debatay v'anitzah. It's good. It's good. I want to say a remnant. Debatay v'anitzah is the Gematria Yom Chag Tisha B'Av Hazeh. Like the planch of Kiddush. Debatay v'anitzah. It'll be good. It'll become a Yom Zakei. It'll change. It'll have a transformation from a Yom Chayid and become a Yom Zakei. Tisha B'Av, the Madrash says, is Yom Leidas does it. Every year on Tisha B'Av, a certain Nishon is born that has the potential of being Mashiach. There's the psichta of the Madrash Rabba on Eicha, the Madrash Rabba. Tisha B'Av is Yom Leidas does it. And that's why the Yiddish minhag, that Tisha B'Av Chatzos, we get up. They don't sit on the floor anymore. And by the Sardim, there's a minhag that the women wash the faces. It's again Vina B'Gemara, but that's the minhag. They want to rejoice, Mashiach is born. So there's a communion in Tisha B'Av. Yom Leidus does it. So there's a very original, beautiful conversation that says, what's Pesach? Pesach is Manitis Mitzrayim. It's a Yom Tov. In the times of the others, was Pesach a Yom Tov? No. Pesach was perhaps a kindness. Because it was on Pesach, the first day of Pesach, that the rebbe was megala in the day of the exile of Bein Absarim, that there'll be a galus. And probably, he says, Abraham Avinu and the other civilization had a kindness something. Although we find that he gave the malach and matzahs, but it doesn't mean that he ate. He didn't eat. This is what I'm adding. And it was a kindness something. Because of the Gezeirah by Nefsarim, there's going to be a galus. When Pesach Yitzias Mitzrayim came, that day was transformed. The Yagim, the Simcha, the Shibud, the Gula, the Yafayla, the Yagada, like we say in the Baracha before the second case. It turned around. The same thing is going to happen with Tisha B'Av. Right now, we're in a month with Tisha B'Av is a time. But it's become a big Yom Tov, like Pesach became. That's what it becomes Pesach. According to what we said before, that corresponding to the days, there is a Yom Zakai and there is a Yom Chayes. And the Gemara says, Megalgul and Chutz Yom Zakai, or Megalgul and Chayv Yom Chayes, and that's why so many Paranas happen in Tisha B'Av. The Gemara talks about 5 Paranas that happen in Tisha B'Av. After the Chsimas Hashat, more things happen in Tisha B'Av. I want to enumerate them down. The last thing that happened was World War I broke out on Tisha B'Av. And World War I never ended yet. It never, there was no armistice. Anybody that stated this, and Big Tzaddikim explained it then. World War I is still in front of us. It started on Tisha B'Av. The war to end all the war, but it did what the war didn't end. So just like in the Nefesh, there are, among Yiddish and Nefesh, there are tzaddikim and Rishayim. So among the Jewish days of the calendar, there are days that are tzaddikim and there are days that are Rishayim. There's a Yom Zaki and there's a Yom Chayim. But they're all in the Jewish calendar. So each one is assigned to his day. A tzaddik has a shaykhis with a day which is a Yom Zakai. A Rasha, he is rooted in a day which is a Yom Chayim. A Bachar at one Sawa, his roots are in Tisha B'Av. And so the Pasuk says in Tehillim, we probably, I don't know, I really hope so. Some boys over here say Tehillim, otherwise it's going to be, sounds like hieroglyphics to you. Zaymim Rasha v'tzadik v'vakesh l'amitzay, Hashem yitzchak loi, ki yaza yoymei. The Rasha has his day. There's a special day in the calendar, that's the Rasha's day. And the Yom Chayim, he's going to fall. But the tzaddikim, his day Hashem yemei sminim. So the Messiah says, hey, sminim, the yemeim sminim. But when the Rasha does tshuva, not only is he misakin his neshama, he's also misakin his day. If all the Yidden would do tshuva, Yidden of Golub, now, to get finish. Around 12. All right. So there's the crowd of the Yidach and men on neither. So Banishar the maid, if Mashiach would, if there never would have been any Galus, many Nishis would have gone gotten north. There were Bashar Mofud of the day. Yeah. So we need the Galus. We need the Galus just like we need the Geula. The Chet of Miriam was a hechrich, noira alila al b'nei Adam. So that's Tisha B'Av should come. Tisha B'Av is a young mayat. Just like every Russia had in himself a Nekuta Taiva. We spoke about it on Yom Kippur. Yom Kippur is right on the B'Gematria Yom Kippur. There's a Nekuta Taiva in every Yid. In the hidden chamber of his heart, the biggest Russia wants to be a tzaddik. And the day that represents that Nekuda is Yom Kippur. So therefore, Yom Kippur is the day that a person can build up his house on that day and become a tzaddik. There's a shayrish anelam, a hidden shayrish in every Yid. The Sfarim call it shayrish anelam. We spoke about it. So so in every brasha, and that's the 40th day, because the Bria of the Nefesh is 40 days. So there's 40 madregas in a person. And if he sins, he doesn't have Aveira, they have to give him 40 malchus. The Torah says, 40 malchus. But we only give 39. Because in the 40th day, that's the Nekuda. There's no Aveira. So the 40th day from the Shreida Shalom is Yom Kippur. It's the 40th Sarah in the Mikveh. Nekuda of Avraham Avinu. So the Chelek of Kamim Mal, the Shreida Shalom, that we have a Nekuda, the Yerusha from Avraham Avinu. Shreida Shalom, the Chedush Yerim said that that's what we make the bracha on. Bracha Hashem Magen Avraham. The Rabban Yisraelim is Magen. He protects the Nekuda of Avraham. It should never become extinguished. That little spark of Avraham should never become extinguished, even in the biggest Rasha. There's a piece of Avraham Avinu in him. There was the Reish of the Mamin and the name Manin. I added a little Ramis to that to become a sniff to the Heilige Chedush Yerim. Sherish Anelam is B'Gematria, B'Chata Hashem Magen Avraham. So therefore, on Tisha B'Av we don't say Tachanun. It has a wonderful future. Tisha B'Av. There's a Sherish Anelam of Mashiach, Leidas Ben David. It's Ne'elam, it's hidden. In Gematria, there's a certain form of Gematria which is called Ne'elam. It's hidden. Taisus talks about it in the Chagiga, Daf Yedalit, the Ne'elam. The Gemara says over there that it's 500 years from heaven to earth, from heaven to heaven, and so on and so forth. So the Taisus says that the Shin, Shin Dalet and Yud, Shin is spelled Shin Yud Nun. But when we say a Shin, and when we read I should have the Shin, we don't say out the Yud Nun. We only say the Shin. So Taisus says that's Ne'elam. In the Dalet, the Ne'elam is Lamed Taf. And the Yud, the Ne'elam is Vav Dalet. So the Ne'elam is the Gematria 500. That's what Taisus says over there. The Ne'elam is 500. In other words, in the Shem Shin Dalet Yud, there's a Halam, it's something we don't see. And that's Shama Li Alamei Dai. The Abisha said, still here, 500 years, the distance, not more. That's the Ne'elam, we don't see it. I wanted to be nice or something for that, or build rather on that. Tisha B'Av has a Sherish Analam in itself. Mashiach will come that day. The Beis Hamikdash, the Beis Hashlishi, will build that day. The Ne'elam of Tisha B'Av, if you figure it out with your calculators, Tisha B'Av, let's say the Tuf of Tisha B'Av, the Tuf Yud Vav. Keep the Ne'elam, the Yud Vav. The Shin, Yud Nun. Keep the Ne'elam, the Yud Nun. Figure out that way all these 7 Aishis of Tisha B'Av. The Ne'elam of Tisha B'Av, what's hidden in Tisha B'Av, is the Gematria Bayis HaShlishi, the third base of English. It's Ne'elam there. The Ditcher Rav said that on Shabbos Chazayin, the Rabbeinu Shvarim shows every year the Bayis HaShlishi. It's there, but it's Ne'elam. On Shabbos Chazayin, he feels it. Chazayin Yeshayahu, he feels it. Chazan, the heart, Chazayin. So, Tisha B'Av has a Shayrash and Ne'elam. Every Yom Tov has a certain nekuda that feeds the entire year. From Pesach, we take a Geula for the entire year. From Shavuos, we take Torah for the entire year. From Sukkot, we take B'tachon for the entire year. From Rosh Hashanah, we take Yiras Shemayim for the entire year. From Yom Kippur, we take Tshuva for the entire year. What do we take from Tisha B'Av? Tisha B'Av is a Mayan. What do we draw from Tisha B'Av, and what do we put into our buckets when we draw from Tisha B'Av for the entire year? The Indian of knowing that the rebbe is going to help, that there's something hidden there. That whenever we see a tzara, we should know that on the deep root of it, there's Zera Taiva coming out of it. And to the point that you believe that, you're going to see that. Yom Kippur, as I said once, you heard that already, is Maratya Reitzani. Like the Rambam said that even the Russia that we spank, and it doesn't want to bring a carbon until it says Reitzani. Reitzani is the Matra Yom Kippur. So the Kuta Taiva comes out of every Yid on Yom Kippur. So the Meraglim had the Kuta Taiva in themselves. Kulam Anashim, Rashi said they were tzaddikim. But after they did the Aveira, there was still a Shayrash and Ne'elam in them. If they would have done that Aveira another day, they would never have any tkuma. But because it was on Tisha B'Av, they have a Shayrash and Ne'elam. Tisha B'Av also has a Shayrash and Ne'elam. The two Shirashim and Ne'elam combined, Keflayim v'Tushiyah, Taiva Mashnayim in the Echad. And that was their takana. But the Meraglim that the Pagam was on Tisha B'Av were ma'ayra than the Kuta Taiv in the Tisha B'Av. And the Tisha B'Av was ma'ayra than the Kuta Taiv in the Meraglim. And that's their hope. How was the Zaycha to that? Because they waited for Miriam. So there was Zaycha for the Bayis HaShlishi, the Shayrash and Elam of Tisha B'Av. So why did they wait for Miriam? Because Miriam waited for Moshe. Where did it say that Miriam waited for Moshe? But the satmar b'chayse merachek. That means that Yidden are going to do tshuva, there's the Sharash and Elam. But the satmar b'chayse merachek is v'matria u'bal ha'ayvden b'yeretz Asher v'nedach b'yeretz Mitzrayim. The lost ones are going to come back. Also, at the Satmar b'chayse is v'matria b'aynei b'chat Hashem b'aynei Yerushalayim. So because they were nichshal on the day of latest David, they were zeicha to a tikkun of the Yom of Tisha B'Av. Therefore, v'amalei masad Yosef Miriam. They didn't travel until Miriam went out of her quarantine. Because of that, they were zeicha that the Meraglim were pagan dafka on the day of latest David. And it has a good nekuda in it, the day that Mashiach will be born. So that was ma'ayra, the good nekuda in them. And that was all because of Miriam. It was a schar. It was a big taiva that Miriam did to Klal Yisrael, that they waited for her. Because of that, it came out Dafka on Tisha B'Av. If the Meraglim would have come back on any other day of Tisha B'Av, those Meraglim would have got lost altogether, would have been any ticket for them. And because of that, the Zaycha to Leidas David. There's the pasuk in Yeshaya that speaks about Leidas David. Ki yalad yulav lanu Bein Nitan Lanu, Gati, and Mitzvah, Shechmai, or the Shalom and Kates, Hakika, Devin, Bama, Malachte. Speaks about later David. Ha'amle Nata, the Yosef Miriam, she was gay and later David. The Ha'amle Nata, the Yosef Miriam is the Matchia, Ki Yalad Yula, the Lanu, Bein Nitan Lanu. That's the later David. All right, I think I have to stop now. You have to look at this here. Have it left.
For a share on the topic of Vayhi ben Nisayah, the benefits of the travels of Golos, given Topshim and Bches, press 1. For a share on the topic of Vayhi ben Nisayah, the East Shrewd mission in the summer travel, given Topshim and Zion, press 2. For a share on the topic of the scattering of the Eden and